Hello, YouTube world.
Hello.
This is Matt and Amanda for Galootin Free, episode 2. Please like, share, subscribe, if you don't mind.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. We got some snow last night, but what we're here to talk to you about today is our Catholic journeys. I think it's pretty interesting how the directions we both came from.
I think it's very telling of modern Catholic journeys in general. I feel like I've read a lot of articles lately about. I actually pulled some up, and maybe I'll reference them at some point, or at least post them on here. Just the demographics of the Catholic Church and how the percentages of people who've grew up Catholic, like myself, and fallen away, and people who joined. It's really, I think, quite fascinating how that ebb and flow goes.
Yeah. We just wanted to tell a story about where we both have been, kind of starting with our youth, our raising, our formative years. So I don't know, did you want to kind of start? You just mentioned you were a Cradle Catholic.
Do you want to start with prayer real quick?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Father, Son, Holy Ghost.
Take it away.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Ghost. All right, so now let's talk about it.
Okay, so I think I mentioned this in the first video. If I didn't, I meant to. Just my journey as a Catholic. I was a Cradle Catholic, which, if you're not familiar, means that I grew up Catholic. My grandparents are very devout Catholics, and they actually became Catholics in their youth or their teenage years, and then they raised their children, my mom and her brothers and sisters, Catholic. And so my mom was Catholic, my father was not. My father converted later on in life, and I think that had a big role to play. In fact, I think Taylor Marshall, who I listen to a lot, has talked about in one episode the importance of fatherhood in Catholicism, because I don't know the exact statistic, but it's basically like if a father goes to church, to Catholic Church, his kids are like 50 or 70% likely to stay Catholic. But if it's just the mom, it's like 30%, or maybe it might be less than that. I don't know the exact stat, but there was a stat about that. So my mom was Catholic and went to church every week. And so I went with her. My brother kind of went and didn't go, back and forth. He wasn't the biggest fan of the Catholic Church throughout his whole catechesis. But I would say in general, like, I really did enjoy church as a kid. I had a pretty strong faith, I would say, as a lot of younger kids do. And I definitely followed the Catholic Church, but I didn't. I followed what I was taught, but I found out when Matt converted, in general, RCIA, or no.
Jump ahead too far.
I'm not. It's relevant. Right. So the catechesis back then in the 90s, probably even earlier than that, was very, very poor, probably after Vatican II. And it didn't resonate into my more, which is that the formative years, the teenage and adulthood. Yeah, it didn't resonate. It didn't stick with me. And it's mostly because not only from church, but a lot of other places, I was kind of told that this is important, but it's kind of old fashioned. Some of the beliefs are old fashioned, even from fellow Catholics. I would hear that some of these things are just, well, they should be changed. The Pope just doesn't want to make too much controversy. Things like birth control, and even, abortion. So a lot of those things made me question, women being in the priesthood and deacons and things like that. Those are all things I was kind of told throughout my years as a young person and into my teenage years that, well, they should be changed, and they probably will be. And, it just, to me, it seemed like it was totally fine to just take what you wanted from the Catholic faith. And I really didn't know, I would say, I really didn't read the Bible much as a young person. I wasn't really encouraged to that much. The rosary was just kind of this thing you did occasionally when you felt like, you really needed prayers, like there was a family emergency or something.
Did you know how to do the rosary then?
I knew there was Hail Marys. I knew it was mostly Hail Marys.
Did you know the Hail Mary?
Yeah. Oh, I knew. I still knew the basic Catholic prayers. You even went to church with me before, and you're like, oh, I'm impressed how you know all the songs.
Yeah.
Because I went every week.
Did you know like the mysteries to contemplate for the Hail Mary?
I recently, I feel like, learned those. And I might have learned them. Once again, you did catechism once a week, every Wednesday. A lot of kids, I think, feel like Protestants went to church on Wednesdays too. But we did catechism every Wednesday from, I want to say first or second grade you start, because you do your first communion, all the way through 8th grade. And then after that, you can choose to do youth group and things like that. But I didn't go to Catholic school, so it was, I did it at my local parish, and I learned later that my local parish was, a more modern parish, which is fine for some people. But I discovered later that that's one of the reasons why maybe I wasn't so devout of a Catholic, because I wasn't taught those really strong traditional Catholic principles. So yeah, I knew, the basic Catholic stuff, of course, the basic prayers. I of course knew that, but I would even say that I didn't feel like I was really taught the real true importance of the Eucharist in my childhood. Once again, I'm sure I was taught it, but when you just go to catechism once a week for like an hour or two, it's probably like an hour or two. It's how much that really sticks with you. And I really have no idea what my teachers were, because it just didn't stick with me. So I'm assuming it might have been my fault as well, but it wasn't a rich teaching. And I love my father. God rest his soul. He's passed away, but he wasn't Catholic either. So just that importance at home, it wasn't that important at home, because my father wasn't really there to lead that. My mom did what she could, but when there's only one parent leading that Catholic journey, I can only imagine how hard that would be to come home and be like, oh, I want to talk about church, I want to talk about my faith, and your spouse is like, nope, not interested. I don't want to listen to your faith. I can only imagine how hard that would be. And for the kids, obviously, that it didn't really stick with me long term until much later in my life. So do you think a lot of your peers at the time were kind of the same way? Like, I would say so. I didn't have a lot of friends at church. I think that had a big thing to do with it. I felt like I was pretty nerdy, and still am. But I felt like a lot of the kids I was in catechism and stuff with were like the popular kids and kind of jerks and not really that fun. No. I mean, especially the boys, but I was pretty nerdy, so no one really wanted to talk to me much. So I think that had a big thing to do with it, because even when I wanted to do youth group, I kind of felt like an outsider, because I wasn't in the in crowd, so to speak. So I didn't feel that connection with my peers either, which I think made a big difference. I really tried my best being a little nerdy bookworm, but when I didn't have any connection besides, basically my mom and my grandparents and a couple of my cousins, I really had no core group of friends or anything to rely on. I know you did have a core group of friends who were Christian, which I think helped, but I didn't. So when it came to me, striking out in adulthood, it was really me just kind of piecing together, oh yeah, I'm Catholic. What does that mean? I don't know. We'll get to that. I'll talk about that when but yeah, that's my childhood. I'd say as a Catholic, just kind of loosey-goosey. Yeah. I believe in God.
Yeah. Mine's a bit different. Just early life, super Protestant, hyper Protestant. Of course, didn't really even know that word Protestant at the time, just Christian, right? My kind of perception of Catholicism was, yeah, that's like a kind of Christian. So we're all good. We're all Christian. Awesome. And then I know there's Mary and saints and stuff, and it just gets a little weird from there. Right. Were you one of those, because I had a couple of kids ask me if I was Catholic. Were you one of those kids who were like, those weird Catholics over there that pray to Mary and worship saints? Because I had some kids, I remember asking me at one point. I think eventually at some point I started thinking like that, or heard people talking like that. But honestly, as a kid, until my teens, probably, it didn't even care about that. It didn't even register on my radar that is something I should even wonder about. And I knew that I knew that was just that's just a thing Catholics do. I don't know. Yeah. And I mean, isn't it? But but I'd go to Bible studies. We do Bible trivia, youth group all the time, Sunday school, after church, Christian rock music, got into a fair amount. And so my parents were divorced, and another
Oh, mine were as well.
But both still went to church. My dad, though, was a little more agnostic. We would sometimes just go to church. We went to this place called Madison Square Church.
Something you would tell this story. It's one of my favorite stories of your dad.
Oh, really?
It's ridiculous.
Well, we would just go for the music and leave. We would go because it would be like gospel, like soulful, urban, just rock out music, like sing your heart out music. People dancing with flags and stuff in the aisles. And
I'm not laughing at the gospel. It's just that this is a classic your dad's story. So
yeah, and we would just go, we'd sing, we'd enjoy it, and we'd leave. And part of it too was the place we'd go. This guy would give like 2-hour sermons. Like he would just go and go and go and go. And it was, I mean, I kind of enjoyed it because he did it with a lot of passion, but my dad was very pragmatic in that sense. And the funny thing is we come from a strong, like Christian Reform background. Mm-hmm. So my great grandfather was the first, or my great grandfather was the first English speaking Christian Reform minister in West Michigan.
Was he the one at Calvin College? Is the name?
No,
okay,
that's a different one. But yeah, and so my family had gone to Calvin College, which is like part of the Christian Reformed Church. It's like a mecca for that side of the Christian Reformed Church. Obviously, Calvin, named after John Calvin, right? Very anti-Catholic. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so that's kind of my background. That's kind of my upbringing. It was very...
and your mom, you said your mom was Protestant, but like...
Well, yeah, so my mom's background was Catholic as well.
Yes.
And, but never really got into it. Also, just kind of as a kid, aware that my mom was Catholic, and that's just not a thing we are anymore.
But it
did her wrong in some way, which I still need to learn more about. But it was just something we kind of kept our distance from.
But your mom was very richly Christian. You went to church with her a lot.
Yeah. A lot of it was, like my dad going for the music, for instance, too. Like it was what I would come to learn is kind of refilling up this emotional gas tank. And it's like, is that emotional gas tank I got on Sunday going to take me through to next Sunday? Or do I need to stop in Wednesday for youth group? That type of cycle, I think, is super common. I think at times and currently still Catholic churches have like tried to follow that same formula. And that's really sad to me. But eventually, and we'll get into it more, found some more realistic things to grab hold to, and some strong truths of Christ. But we'll get into that more. I don't know. Do you want to talk more about your formative years, Amanda?
I already kind of hit in high school a little bit. It was kind of, I'd say, where I started to fall away a little more, especially because I didn't have any really close friends that were, number one, even very Christian. But on top of that, if they were, it was Christian Reform. So I do remember going to a couple Bible camps and things like that with some of my Christian Reform friends, because I don't know if my church didn't have them or if it's just because like my mom didn't sign me up because I didn't have any friends. Who knows? So I was a small town, so maybe we didn't really have that many retreats or anything. I know that our current church has a lot of stuff for the youth, which I think is great. I wish ours had more stuff like that when I was growing up. But so then I'd say it leads me into college, and in college, I can't say I remember going to. I think I went to church most Sundays still with my mom. Cool. Because I lived at home when I was in college because I wanted to save money and I wanted to work. I was one of those rare people.
Good idea.
So for about half my college career, I stayed at home with my mom and I worked. And then the other half, I moved out and I lived on my own. So then when I probably moved out away from my mom, I don't think I really attended church very often or if ever on Sundays, just rare. So it's probably more of the Christmas and Easter Catholic at that point. Vaguely aware of what was going on in terms of, Ash Wednesday and things like that. And that through college, I had a lot like that. And then when, I started working in the restaurant business, as we all know who work in the restaurant business, Sundays are pretty much a no-go for getting days off at a lot of restaurants. I feel like as a Twisted Rooster where we worked, it was basically you had to have Sundays available. You really can't take that time off.
People want Sundays off.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very anti-Christian thing, honestly.
Yeah, it really is.
But that's you're open on Sundays already. That's kind of the idea. It's like, well.
So I think I thought about at one point, like, oh, I'll just work on Sunday nights, but I was also a teacher or student teaching. So it was really hard. So I think I compromised, like, do I want to, get good sleep on Sunday night or go to church in the morning? So I would usually just be open and available to work Sundays, and I just church was not a priority.
Oh yeah. For me, I mean, sorry to cut in, but for me, it was not like, I didn't even have those thoughts in my head. I wasn't trying to figure out how to get to church. It was like, if I'm off a Sunday and my parents want me to go, all right.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll go, but it was just,
otherwise,
if it works out, coincidence, whatever.
And I would say that led kind of into my really big, I'd say like I told Matt that's the darkest points in my life. Really terrible moral decisions, and just my whole life. I felt like I knew what was going on because I was an adult and grown up, so mature. Just listening to listening to demons and Satan whisper in my ear, in a sense, maybe, I truly believe that now, that, I had all these outside evil influences, not people necessarily, but just temptation coming to me and telling me, oh, it's okay, you can go out and drink and party and have fun, and this is modern women empowerment, yeah. And I just felt so lost in my heart. I felt truly lost and empty, just completely empty. And it wasn't really until we met that I started feeling more full again. And I didn't start going to church again necessarily just because we met, partially because you didn't go to church. But when we moved to Florida, and this is still going into, I'd say, more of my formative years. When we moved to Florida, I think it's just because I was so separated from our family and friends that, and even though I had you, we still had no one. It was just me and you. I really sought out something. And I finally, it's like God just kind of showed this little light down, and I opened my heart a little bit and said, oh, there he is. And so I started reaching out back for Christ in my life. And that was, I'd say, a really pivotal moment for me. And I was still really broken, really empty. I still had so many sins to ask for reparation for, and I still was so lost in terms of my faith. And I didn't know that then. I know it now. But I started to follow Christ's light again. And that, I'd say, it was a really big moment for me, because I like call my mom on Sundays and I'd be like, okay, I just got to Mass. And I started going pretty much every Sunday to Mass. I found a church I really liked. You weren't a huge fan of it, but you hadn't really started your journey yet. And even still, it wasn't like super traditional. Like it's not anything I compare our church now to, which I love, but I would say that still that church made me feel open and welcome in Christ's light again. And so even though it wasn't a perfect church, I had a perfect pastor or anything, it did what I needed it to do at the time. And it made me reconnect with my Catholic faith in a way. And I'd say all throughout this time of my high school through college years and into my early career and everything, I was still experimenting like by going to some Protestant churches. And you're probably, I think you said you're going to reference your friend Tim at one point. And Tim Philanders is an amazing guy. But I remember, because he's one of your best friends, one conversation we had early on when we were dating, I talked to Tim, and I was just telling him how I think I'd gone to church, we had gone to church maybe with your mom or something, and I was telling him, yeah, I really just love this. I walked out and I had like chills, and I was like tearing up. I just felt so connected to God by going to this Protestant church, and I just don't get that from my churches sometimes. And Tim just made this comment like, so if you're going in for heart surgery, do you want to go in to the doctor who just like makes you feel good, says, oh, that's all good, and you're just a really comforting doctor? Or do you want to go to the doctor who's been doing heart surgeries for
2,000 years?
Oh, like 30 years. But yes, exactly.
Oh,
like, yeah. Like, do you want the doctor who has years of experience and knowledge on it? Or do you want one that's just gonna be like, yeah, I'm here for you. It makes you feel really good. And it was kind of like, oh, that really resonated with me and still does. And yeah, so that's I would say my formative years.
It's a life lesson, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really dark. I think unfortunately for a lot of young people in our country, those years of our lives, our 20s, we feel like are such an empowering, great time in our lives. We have so much freedom, and it's really not. It's just like this darkness because we've been told that we can just do whatever we want and there's no consequences.
Yeah.
And
I think a lot of times we're not prepared for the adulthood that society kind of thrust upon us. Mm-hmm. So to kind of, again, tie into some of that stuff, we moved to Florida. I went into Calvin College as a complete atheist from reading Ayn Rand stuff, which essentially had this idea that if you're going to sacrifice yourself, it's going to lead to death, and that if everyone's sacrificing themselves for each other, you're just leading into a culture of death where it's not going to be good for everyone. If everyone does not sacrifice, focus on themselves, it can be the best because you'll have the best net gain from that.
Well, and essentially at one point you told me like selfishness, like it's a good thing according to her.
Right.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that she wrote a book called The Virtue of Selfishness.
Oh.
And to some degree, I think that, philosophy kind of holds still. But what Ayn Rand had a problem with is the idea of family and the idea of God. She felt that God and Jesus Christ, as a Jew, imagine that, she felt that, Jesus Christ and that idea of his ultimate sacrifice was just absolutely the worst thing in the world. And that it was, mysticism. And that to me is like, staring at the truth. Ayn Rand is staring at the truth and just going in opposite direction. Finally, I've come to realize that. But yeah, I don't completely, a lot of some of the things she says still make a lot of sense to me. However, that was a brief aside. So getting back into Florida, was an atheist then with Amanda. And I think you even remember me saying this. And a lot of this comes from a friend, Tim, at Meaning of Catholic on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely check it out. A lot of great stuff. He was just on Taylor Marshall today.
You get to watch the whole thing yet, but I'm really excited to watch it.
And I kind of because of him, I think, and he had a very long religious journey. I would say to Amanda, and I would accompany her to church, I would say, I respect the Catholic Church.
Well,
I respect their tradition.
A trip with Tim when we first moved in together.
Mm-hmm.
You guys went to New York, and
Yep.
you went to some Greek Orthodox church.
No, we just went to a traditional Latin mass.
Oh, okay.
Which was hard to come by.
It was an Orthodox church too.
We definitely did go to an
you told me it was
Orthodox
like really like
at one time.
like standing the whole time, because I remember you supposed to do it with me, but I remember.
forget. I don't know if that was at the same time though.
No, I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah, you guys went on this long trip and everything, and you stayed. Yeah, but yeah, so you definitely still went on some spiritual journeys with Tim, even though at the time you were still very much spiritual journeys, right?
I mean, it was just a journey.
Okay.
I don't know if it was spiritual.
Well, you went. Okay, but
it was a journey, and it incorporated some spiritual exploration, I guess.
True.
But I would say the total character of the journey was not spiritual.
I don't know if you want to share what you used to refer to God as when we were dating, which always like broke my heart a little bit. But
What? No, what did I refer to him as? The magic?
No.
Oh, the flying spaghetti monster.
Mm.
Yeah. So that's a kind of a meme that the flying spaghetti monster is just as valid as any god you could invent. They would say even touched by his noodly appendage. It's a whole joke culture thing. You're called a pastafarian. Totally forgot about that.
You did? Oh my god.
Yeah, it's just kind of
just drive me mad. I was like, I can't even, man.
kind of an atheist thing. And
this is why I truly believe God was just like, maybe that's why he led me back into the church, because he's like, Matt needs this.
Yeah, maybe tragic and sad.
I remember, I don't want to put too much into like, if you pray and you pray and you pray, you're going to get what you want. But seriously, I prayed when I started going to church again, every Sunday I prayed for Matt. Every single Sunday I prayed for Matt.
Yeah. Well, there's some other things I should mention too. So I was actually part of, for a fair while, my mom remarried, and we were part of the Episcopal Church. They got married in an Episcopal Church, which I still don't even know how that fits in. Maybe it's a type of Anglicanism or it's just its own thing, but it's basically exactly Catholic Church, but no Rome.
And I don't think they believe the Eucharist is the...
That could be too. I don't know exactly. All I knew was it was my first exposure to like this liturgical structure. I was actually an altar boy with the Episcopal Church, and I had no idea what I was doing. And I basically got suited up, said, "Here, hold this candle," walked down this aisle, and they would just like whisper. The other people would like whisper to me and tell me what to do. And I don't have a good like structural memory for that type of thing. Like I didn't understand like even now I'll still ask Amanda, like, when do we bring up, like, we've had to bring up the gifts sometimes. And I'm like, when do we do that? Like, I don't even know when we bring up the gifts.
I don't understand how you were in plays as a child. Like, you were in so many plays where you're like, how do you...
A lot of practice, a lot of just repetition. But so I almost approached it with a fair degree of disrespect because I didn't understand liturgical structure at all. I wouldn't even know what that word meant at the time. And I would almost be just like trying to hold back laughter as an altar boy, not knowing what to do, and just kind of, I got through it. I did it. I accomplished my objectives. And so that, I don't know, that is what that is. But it gave me a little bit of a glimpse into that Catholic world. I still didn't even know at the time, this Episcopal way of doing things, that's what you get at a Catholic church too. But
how old were you?
This was probably 12, 13.
Okay.
Yeah. Kind of maybe middle school age, maybe a little bit before. Anyway, that was an interesting experience. But my exposure to Catholic church too, I went to like a friend's brother died and went to a funeral there. And then it was like, okay, some of this same stuff is the same as the Episcopal Church. But the funny thing was that Catholic Church was much more modernized, where the Episcopal Church, by kind of Catholic standards today, would be a bit more traditional. In the way they had altar rails that you kneel down at for communion and things like that. Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Whereas the modern Catholic Church was way more like the Protestant churches I went to. So totally still didn't even understand what true, traditional Catholicism was.
Nor did I would say.
Sure. Yeah. And I will say too, like, I was at a point where through my Christian upbringing, we were focused on a relationship with Jesus Christ. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I am. I read it in a recent book. It's really fascinating.
What it's all about is this personal relationship with Jesus Christ, and that view of Christianity, and that even in teachings and learning, to approach it as a religion is dangerous, foolish. You don't have to do it. God does not request that of us. It's a waste of time, and almost like any kind of structured religion and discipline is of the devil. Even like you just need to connect with Jesus Christ. Your actions are important, but they're secondary to engaging in this kind of emotional, feelings-based like dialogue. And
I think that
you really make God whatever you want God to be.
That's what I was going to say. I think that's why we have so many issues like this in our modern society, of so many people who claim to be Christian. And I'm sure in their heart and mind they are, but it's such a lack of understanding. When you make God whoever you want God to be, that's not Christianity. Like, God is very specific about what you need to do to go to heaven. And if you read any scripture, I mean, there's nowhere he says, "Oh, you're good." I mean, Jesus's classic line is, "Go forward and sin no more." Like, he will forgive you, but it's not, "Oh, you're forgiven no matter what. Just say you're sorry and we're fine." Like, that'd be like your child coming up to you and being like, "Oh, I hit my sister." "Oh, okay." You say you're sorry. "Okay." And then she goes over and smacks her sister again. You're like, "Oh, well, you already got forgiveness, so you're fine." Yeah. No parent would do that. Right. And we're talking about God here. This basic parenting. We're talking about God's relationship with us, his children. Yeah. He has very high expectations of us. And so yeah, I started to say, to Amanda, who would drag me along to Catholic churches in Florida, which honestly, I still feel were in many ways kind of superficial and things like that. So they probably were. But
there was one priest who
was a very Protestant-y priest.
And I got told that this was pretty crazy. Well, no, I'm talking about a different one. He had like a dragon emblem on his frock. I think it is. A different church too. But it very hard to understand, which is, another thing I've seen in Catholic churches as well. There's priest shortages and things like that. I know in other parts of the world where priesthood is flourishing, but the language barrier for me as someone approaching Catholic from the outside, not a language barrier, more pronunciation barrier, was like hard for me to handle. We
had a lot of priests from the Caribbean.
But just it was very still like, oh, I kind of get this is like the same as my Protestant thing with a little more structure to it. But I would still be like, I respect the tradition. I respect that this has been around for 2,000 years. I kind of at the time wasn't even honest with Amanda with how removed from God I actually was. I was still kind of like, going to do this to keep the peace, keep Amanda happy, keep Amanda thinking that I'm, at least open to and oriented towards this Christian life, but I kind of wasn't.
Well, I remember when I don't even know if we were engaged or anything at this point, but we started still going to, and you were like, hey, let's check out a couple Protestant churches. Because I think you felt like that. Hey, maybe if I reconnect with the Protestant faith, I'll feel
I can tap back into that
and we
emotional drip.
And we tried a couple,
and see if you like it.
I remember us going, and I'd be like, it was nice. People were nice. Music was nice. And I remember one specific time we went, it was one of those Protestant churches where they kind of just take over that building for the day. It wasn't actually a church, right? There's a lot of
it was like a gym.
Yeah. It was like, here's a space you can use on Sundays. And so we went, and I was like, it was nice. People are nice. Sermon was good. And you're like, well, you didn't like it? I was like, I just don't. I just feel like something's missing. And I didn't get this till this is like once again a sign from God that God's like, yep, there is something missing. Keep it up, Amanda, because it wasn't until we went to RCIA with Matt, RCIA, that we were talking about how the Eucharist is the meat and potatoes. It's everything. It is literally what the purpose of Mass is about.
Mm-hmm.
is experiencing Jesus Christ through the Eucharist. And I didn't realize it at the time. Like I said, I had a very soft meaning of what the Eucharist actually was and what I was partaking in Mass. And it's really sad to me now, but I was not appreciating that for its entirety until really a few years ago. So but those were all things to me, God talking to me and saying, yes, you're not getting what you need to out of these Protestant churches. You're going to, you need to go back to your Catholic faith. And so,
I'm going to get into
delve into
current kind of from a little bit ways ago becoming a Catholic. So this is what probably we got married in 2015 in the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. I was not a Catholic at the time.
You don't need to be to get married in the Catholic Church.
Yeah, I was. They needed to verify my baptism.
Yeah.
And we did some Catholic learning classes in order to be, to get a Catholic marriage. We did some counseling through a Catholic
I'm so
guy.
Appreciative of that.
Yeah, I learned a lot. We did a natural family planning class, which
and a retreat as well.
Yeah, retreat, but it was like a day.
Yeah,
we didn't go anywhere. Yeah. But anyhow, went through some of that stuff. So that was initial exposure to stronger, more high level Catholicism stuff. Ended up getting married at St. Anne's Church on Mackinac Island. Beautiful. Very kind of a tourist church, but also
a
great
oldest
Catholic
church in Michigan? No, northern Michigan. I can't remember, but it's like been open around say 1800s. So,
yeah, very long time. But still wasn't Catholic at that time. Some very important things happened: birth of our daughter Lillian, and death of my father, death of Amanda's father. And
my father died after you had already become Catholic, though.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And I would say I think the birth of my daughter and the timing, like the church timing of when you would start RCIA, just kind of happened relatively close to each other.
Lillian was baptized in August, and I think you started RCIA in September.
Yeah, and the birth of a child, a new human life, gives you a lot of perspective. But another factor that played into things is we bounced to all these churches. We went to a ton of Catholic churches in Florida. We went to Catholic churches around Grand Rapids.
Because I told Matt it was very important when I was pregnant. I'm like, we need to find a home base.
Yeah.
I'm getting my child baptized in a Catholic church,
right,
and we need to find a church that we're going to go to.
And it just seemed like, I don't know, a really sad time.
Well, unfortunately, I feel like where we live, particularly this rural area, is surrounded by a lot of more of the Reformed, Vatican II, kind of like you said, like Protestant feeling.
Pursuing the Protestant thing
churches.
To kind of tap into this wave of popularity that is very non-Catholic. Hey, we're Catholic, but we're going to behave like we're non-Catholic to try and attract people which is obviously you don't want to blend in with the crowd. You want to stand out and be your own person. And so we bounced around to all these rural Catholic churches that Amanda had gone to through her life.
And some of them I just started, they were just close.
Yeah. But you knew about them and things like that. And finally, following good old Tim at Meaning of Catholic, we went to St. Isidore's a few times. We went to St. Thomas as well. I think they still bust out the guitar and the drums and things like that.
More recently, they started doing that,
but they had left St. Isidore's. They decided they're leaving St. Isidore's
because they had a change in, I think, the past.
Yeah, and I actually learned more about that recently. Like he was getting angry at people for going to confession or something weird like that, crazy like that. But he ended up moving to Sacred Heart in Grand Rapids.
And their daughter went to the school there, and they were familiar with it.
Did you go there before that? Okay.
Yep.
So we ended up moving there, or we ended up trying that out. The first time, there was just I don't know how to describe it, a reverence, a respect, a seriousness, a approach to faith. An approach in the homilies to things that mattered to me, like life and death and good and evil and our culture. That I in general felt like more people, religion or not, needed to be talking about and living through and thinking about. And here I am at this just focal point of all the things that are important in life, and they are diving right into it in a truthful, open way. There's babies crying. There was a very high lack of superficiality that I had just experienced in my whole church life, where no
TV screen or
no TV screens. But it was more like the baby thing for sure, and
no
just
cry room.
People taking things very seriously, and that it just stood apart from a lot of what I had experienced before, and had a degree of authenticity. And I'm curious to kind of hear what your thoughts on that are. But then, so that really struck a chord to say, okay, I finally found something authentic that I can join and follow and learn from and be a part of. So it was very parish related, in my opinion, why I decided to become a Catholic. And so then we had the birth of our daughter, Lillian. Or did that come?
July. Yeah.
We had already been to Sacred Heart, though?
Yeah,
because you were pregnant there and everything.
But it was, I think, very shortly beforehand. It might have been early, right before she came.
And then I decided to join the RCIA class, where we learned a ton from. And
I went with you. You went to one, because it's
just before period, right? before I joined up is when during I was in RCIA classes when I lost my father. Yes. But a lot of what I had been thinking about was death and evil in the world, and as Catholicism as the one thing, Christianity in general, yes, but Catholicism as the one thing that for 2,000 years had an approach to death and evil in the world. These two things that, as far as I'm concerned, and I have not heard otherwise, are unexplainable and unknown. We do not fully grasp the nature of death and evil, and the only thing to stand against it is the Catholic Church, is Jesus Christ, and faith in Jesus Christ. And so I begin RCIA class, and we had this book, Catholic Christianity by Kreeft. And the first line is just played exactly into what I had been thinking. And the first line, it goes into why we need faith. And it says, I don't know if you can see this. It's backwards anyway. But it says we need faith because our world is full of death. And it is. And
I think you actually use that line in your eulogy for your dad.
I did. Yeah. It's it really touched a nerve. They're just the origins of life and the ends of life are complete mysteries to everyone. And when you try to assume or explain that they're not, you're just in denial of Christ and God. And I think throughout my atheist life, which was maybe a good 6 years of my life, maybe, it's kind of like there's that deep-seated notion that you are in denial. And I think we all have to deal with that. I think a lot of atheists have to deal with that.
And I'm an atheist. I would say a lot of Christians who fall away, like myself as well.
Yeah.
You're in denial of your sins. You're in denial of, the truth. The truth. Ultimately, the truth. Like, you just don't want to hear it. It's too painful to hear. It's too painful to hear that what you're doing is not acceptable.
Right. So that's kind of been my journey so far. And then there's been a lot more learning, a lot more getting involved, kind of returning to some of these Latin prayers, learning how to pray the rosary, going to confession.
Yeah, our church.
But yeah, I'll let you talk a bit more. I really have to use the restroom.
We'll do just a few more minutes. But yeah, our church specifically is very traditional. So myself as a Catholic, like I said, I went to a lot of more modern churches. It was strange the first few masses to get used to kneeling to take the Eucharist. I was not used to that. The number of altar servers, and specifically at our church, only altar boys. And some people may not agree with that, which is fine. But I actually learned about why we do it at RCIA. I started going with Matt after he had gone to a couple classes, and I'm so glad I did, because it really retaught me about my faith and a lot of things I had no idea I was missing out on. And I am so happy I went because, it's okay. Hi. Because I never felt closer to Christ and my relationship with the Father. I've grown closer with our Holy Mother as well. My whole relationship. And as Matt said, my father also passed away that year that he became. So that was 2018, the year that Matt joined the church. His father died in February. My father died in August. Matt's father died of alcoholism. My father died from illness, but he had suffered from a lot of illnesses his whole adult life. So starting with cancer, and that's really honestly why I think he ended up ultimately passing, is because when he had cancer when he was 18, he suffered from the radiation treatment. So I can go into that later, but basically, my father had been sick for 3 months, struggling for his survival in the hospital. And then following fall, we found out we were pregnant in September, which we were very excited about, especially after having suffered 2 deaths in our family, our fathers. That was very hard. So it was a bit of a celebration that we found out we were pregnant, but then within 10 weeks, we miscarried and lost the baby. So it was a very difficult year, probably the most trying in terms of loss. Mm-hmm. However, despite all that loss, I still felt I'd never been closer to Christ in my life. Yeah. I never felt more at peace in my life than I had after all that loss, which seems crazy, but that's what God, I think truly, number one, God gave us Lillian, and right when he did, for that reason, because he knew what we're going to experience that year. And he also built our relationship. He helped lead us back to him, I'd say, through maybe Tim and Sacred Heart and everything, in order to help us through that. Because I don't know how we would have made it without without Lillian and our faith. I don't know how we would have made it through that storm.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I look back at my life and had to go through those things at any other time, it would have been just me going off the deep end to be consumed by passions and sin and distraction. And instead, we faced it head on together, openly and honestly, and
with God.
Yeah.
Walked
And
hand in hand with
grew from it. And we're really an example to our fellow family members, our friends, and hope to continue that pattern in life. And, even find ourselves welcoming suffering from God.
Suffering is so important.
Yeah.
I'm actually doing I wish I had it. It's the St. John Paul II's, forgot it's his book. It's not really a book, but it's like his apostolate. Is that the name of it? Like when they write about suffering, the importance of human suffering.
Okay.
And this is literally what it's about. How important it is for us we suffer for a reason. It's not just for. It's not like God's up there saying, "Oh, look what I did to you." No, we suffer for a reason. We do it to raise up our cross.
Pick up your cross.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I guess, in bringing everything to today, we are, going to Mass, we're going to confession, we're praying the Rosary, we're approaching Lent, which I think and we're currently in the period of Septuagesima, which I've learned about, and it's really a preparation for Lent. And I kind of see it where I'm kind of gearing up my body and my spiritual resolve as we approach Lent to have a very strong Lent, to push myself during Lent, and really dive head on, like we have in the past, into what our religion of Catholicism should be, and our devotion to Jesus Christ. And I think we're excited to do that as a family, and kick butt. So we'll keep you updated on that. We just really wanted to get this out as one of our key episodes, because a lot of what we'll talk about will have a lot to do with that. We're still learning. We're galoots.
Yeah.
We're galoots when it comes to Catholicism, but it's really fun to learn more and more. And we'll continue with that. If you have
so if any
corrections for us, or like, hey, you're saying this, but it's actually more like this, or hey, you guys should check this out. Hey, that'd be great. We did.
Yeah, because we're still very much still learning, and I'm trying to connect with as many people, I'd say, and build more friendships and relationships in the church as much as possible, because I feel like I have such a lack of knowledge of my own faith. But we're learning. We're doing the best we can, because I want to be a strong example for our daughters, and that's really important to me as well. Yeah,
and I'd say definitely check out Meaning of Catholic on YouTube and Twitter, and there's a blog as well. And then I've learned a lot from E. Michael Jones as well, who's a little more extreme. To some, I think he's just very honest and direct, in my opinion.
The Reverend is another good reference.
The Revenant, yeah.
Revenant.
Yep. And Taylor Marshall we listen to on YouTube as well. Who else? The Vortex. Church Militant. Yep. And there's a lot of good resources out there. It's a big part of Catholicism is the traditions. And traditions are very important to me. They're passed down for a reason. And it's not something we should ignore. It's something we should respect. And I don't know if we're trad Catholics. We're more like galoot Catholics. But I think we really honor and respect some of those traditions, but we have a lot more to learn about them. And there's a lot of conflicting information and some places that aren't really into embracing traditionalism that we're still navigating. So excited to do that with you. And I think that's it.
That's it.
Have a great day, everyone. Yeah. Keep galooting. Galoot freely.